The recruitment station buzzed with activity as beings from dozens of species lined up for military processing. Zephyrians with their crystalline wings caught the artificial light, while hulking Gorvak warriors flexed their 6 arms impatiently. Among them stood Sarah Chen, a small human female who barely reached the chest of most other recruits. The Altarian recruiting officer, Commander Vextal, scanned the crowd with his 4 purple eyes. His species had dominated galactic military operations for 3 centuries, and he took pride in selecting only the finest warriors. When his gaze fell upon Sarah, his mandibles clicked in what could only be described as amusement. "Next," he called, gesturing toward Sarah with one of his elongated fingers. Sarah approached the processing desk, her worn boots making soft sounds against the metal floor. The other recruits whispered among themselves, their various languages creating a symphony of mockery. She had heard it all before during the journey to the station. "Name and species," Commander Vextal demanded, his translator device converting his chittering language into standard galactic. "Sarah Chen, human," she replied simply, meeting his alien gaze without flinching. The commander's antennae twitched as he pulled up her file on his holographic display. "Human. Yes, we received the Terra Coalition's request to include your species in our forces. Tell me, small one, what combat experience do you possess? 3 years with Earth Special Forces, 2 tours in the Antarctic conflict, advanced training in zero-gravity combat and xenobiology," Sarah recited. A Zephyrian behind her laughed, the sound like tinkling glass. "The little pink thing thinks she can fight alongside real warriors," it said to its companion. Commander Vextal studied Sarah's biometric readings with growing skepticism. Humans were a newly discovered species, barely having achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Their physical capabilities seemed laughably inferior compared to established military races. No natural armor, no enhanced strength, no special abilities that made them stand out. "Your species lacks the natural advantages of proven warrior races," the commander said, making notes in her file. "No enhanced durability, limited strength, short lifespan. What exactly do you bring to our forces?" Sarah remained calm, her hands clasped behind her back in military posture. "Adaptability, sir. Humans excel at finding solutions others might overlook." The Gorvak warrior who had been waiting behind her stepped forward, towering over both Sarah and the commander. "Commander, surely you jest by considering this creature. My people have conquered 17 star systems. What has her kind achieved beyond crawling from their mud planet?" Other recruits murmured agreement. The reputation of humans in the galaxy was that of a curious but ultimately insignificant species. They had no great military victories, no feared warrior traditions, nothing that marked them as a force to be reckoned with. Commander Vextal considered this. The Altarian High Command had pressured him to include representatives from all Coalition member species, even the newer, weaker ones. It was politics, nothing more. But looking at this small human female, he wondered if he was making a mistake that would cost lives. "Very well. Human Sarah Chen," he said finally, stamping her recruitment papers with more force than necessary. "You will be assigned to the 47th Reconnaissance Unit. They specialize in observation missions." Sarah understood the slight. The 47th was known throughout the military as a dumping ground for recruits deemed unfit for real combat. It was essentially a punishment assignment disguised as service. "Thank you, sir," she said simply, taking her papers. As she walked away from the desk, the other recruits continued their whispered jokes. The Zephyrian who had mocked her earlier flew past, its wings creating a small breeze. "Try not to break any bones during basic training, human. Your species seems so fragile." Sarah ignored the taunts and made her way to the transport bay. She had faced skepticism before. Growing up on Earth, she had been underestimated countless times. Too small for the military, too weak for special forces, too ordinary to make a difference. Yet here she was, the first human to be accepted into the Galactic Defense Force. The transport ship that would take her to the training facility was a massive Altarian vessel, its hull gleaming with advanced alloys. As Sarah boarded, she noticed that most other species had their own quarters while humans were assigned to shared barracks. Another small humiliation designed to remind her of her place in the hierarchy. In her bunk, Sarah opened her personal communication device and recorded a message for her family back on Earth. "Made it through recruitment," she said quietly. "They don't think much of humans here, but that's okay. We've never needed anyone else's approval to prove ourselves. What none of her fellow recruits knew, what even Commander Vexital's sophisticated scanning equipment had failed to detect, was the small device Sarah carried in a hidden compartment of her gear. It was a communication beacon, designed by Earth's top scientists and powered by technology that the galaxy had never seen before. The beacon was tuned to a very specific frequency, one that could reach across vast distances of space to touch something ancient and powerful, something that had been waiting in the darkness between stars for the right call, the right voice, the right moment to awaken. As the transport ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying Sarah toward her new life as a galactic soldier, the beacon remained silent. But deep in the void, something stirred, something that had been watching humanity's slow emergence into the galactic community with great interest. The other recruits saw Sarah as a joke, a token representative of a weak species. They would learn in time that their assumptions about humans were catastrophically wrong. And when that moment came, when Sarah's true nature was revealed, the galaxy itself would tremble. Training Camp Zarian sat on the edge of a dying star system, its surface scarred by countless military exercises. The facility had been built to break down recruits and rebuild them into proper soldiers. For most species, it was challenging. For humans, it was designed to be impossible. Sarah's first week confirmed everyone's expectations. During physical training, she couldn't match the Gorvak warrior's strength or the Zephyrian's speed. The obstacle courses left her exhausted while others completed them with ease. Her instructors, a mix of veteran Altarians and battle-hardened Krolix, shook their heads in disappointment. Drill Sergeant Korthak, a massive Krolix with scars covering his armored hide, made Sarah his special project. "Human," he would bellow across the training ground. "You move like a dying slug. My grandmother fights better than you, and she has been dead for 50 cycles." The other recruits found this endlessly entertaining. Jexhai, the Zephyrian who had mocked her at recruitment, would hover nearby during Sarah's struggles, offering helpful suggestions like, "Perhaps you should consider a career in food service instead." But Sarah endured. While others relied on their natural advantages, she studied. She learned the weaknesses of every species in her unit. She discovered that Zephyrians became sluggish in high humidity, that Gorvaks had blind spots in their peripheral vision, that Krolix armor had vulnerable joints that could be exploited. The real test came during the third week, when recruits were divided into teams for war games. Naturally, Sarah was picked last, assigned to a group of misfits and washouts that the other teams viewed as easy targets. Her team consisted of a nervous Altarian engineer named Kexapol, who had failed combat trials twice, a young Throrian whose species was known for being peaceful farmers, and 3 other beings from minor species that the major powers barely acknowledged. "This is pointless," Kexapol chittered as they prepared for the exercise. "We are facing teams led by proven warriors. The Zephyrian team alone has 3 offspring of military dynasties. The war game scenario was simple. Capture the enemy flag while defending your own. 6 teams would compete simultaneously in a complex urban environment, filled with obstacles, traps, and simulated weapons." Sarah gathered her team in a circle. "Listen," she said quietly. "They expect us to lose. That's our advantage." The Throrian, whose name was Velnara, looked confused. "How is expected failure an advantage?" "Because they won't plan for us. They'll focus on the real threats and ignore us until it's too late," Sarah explained. "But we need to think differently. Not like soldiers, like survivors." When the exercise began, the stronger teams immediately engaged each other in direct combat. The Gorvak team charged straight at the Zephyrian position, while the Krolix warriors set up defensive positions and waited for enemies to come to them. Sarah's team did something unexpected. They avoided combat entirely. While the others fought, Sarah led her team through the maintenance tunnels beneath the training ground. She had spent her free time studying the facility's blueprints, memorizing every passage and service corridor. "This is not warrior behavior," Kexapol protested as they crawled through a ventilation shaft. "We should be proving our courage in battle." "Courage is useful," Sarah replied, "but victory is better." They emerged behind enemy lines in the area where the Krolix team had established their base. The heavily armored warriors were so focused on the frontal assault that they never considered a rear attack. Sarah's team struck fast and silent. Using the Krolix's own defensive positions against them, they created confusion and chaos. The Throrian, despite his peaceful nature, proved excellent at electronic warfare, disabling the enemy team's communications. By the time the Krolix realized what was happening, Sarah's team had captured their flag and disappeared back into the tunnels. The pattern repeated with each team. Sarah avoided direct confrontation, using knowledge and strategy instead of strength. She turned the environment itself into a weapon, causing a ceiling collapse that trapped the Gorvak team, and creating an electromagnetic pulse that grounded the flying Zephyrians. In less than 2 hours, her team of misfits had collected 4 enemy flags while keeping their own safe. The instructors watched in stunned silence as the results came in. Drill Sergeant Korthak stared at his display screen as if it were malfunctioning. "Impossible," muttered the Altarian tactical instructor. The human team achieved total victory without engaging in a single direct firefight. When the exercise ended and the teams returned to base, the other recruits looked at Sarah with new eyes. HFY, the Zephyrian who had mocked her consistently, approached with what might have been respect. "How did you know about the tunnel systems?" he asked. "I studied," Sarah replied simply. "But when? We all have the same training schedule. While you were sleeping, I was learning. While you were socializing, I was planning." Commander Vextel, who had come to observe the exercise, called Sarah to his office afterward. His purple eyes held a new intensity as he reviewed the tactical recordings. "Your methods are unconventional," he said finally. "Effective, though," Sarah pointed out. "Yes, disturbingly so." The commander leaned back in his chair. "Tell me, human Sarah Chen, where did you learn such tactics?" "Earth history, sir. My species has spent most of its existence fighting wars against superior forces. We learned to be creative." "Creative?" The word seemed to taste strange in the commander's mouth. "The other instructors want to know if your performance was luck or skill." There's a human saying, "Sir, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." That night, word of the humans' victory spread throughout the training camp. Some recruits were impressed, others resentful. A few began to watch Sarah more carefully, wondering what other surprises the small human might have in store. But in the darkest corner of her barracks, as Sarah prepared for sleep, she felt the small beacon in her gear pulse once, very faintly. Something far away had noticed her actions, her growing reputation. Something ancient was beginning to pay attention to the small human who fought like no warrior the galaxy had ever seen. The weeks following Sarah's tactical victory brought unexpected changes to training camp Xerion. Word had spread beyond the training ground about the human who had defeated veteran warriors using nothing but cunning and preparation. Some instructors began incorporating her unconventional methods into their lessons, while others dismissed her success as a fluke. Sarah found herself caught between respect and resentment. The recruits who had once mocked her now watched her carefully, looking for signs of weakness. A few, like Kexpol the Altarian engineer, had developed genuine friendship with her. But others saw her rising reputation as a threat to their own standing. The tension came to a head during advanced combat training. Instructor Velthorn, a scarred Krolix veteran with 12 battle commendations, had designed a new exercise specifically to test individual combat prowess. No teams, no strategy, just raw fighting ability. "Today we discover who among you has the warrior spirit," Velthorn announced, his voice carrying across the training arena. "Single combat, multiple opponents, simulated weapons with full pain feedback. Victory requires both strength and skill." Sarah knew this was meant to expose her. Without her team to support her, without tunnels to hide in or technology to manipulate, she would have to face her fellow recruits in direct combat. Her human physiology put her at a severe disadvantage against species that had evolved for warfare. The first round matched her against Thoraxvin, a Gorvak warrior whose 4 arms could strike from multiple angles simultaneously. The arena fell silent as the two fighters faced each other. Sarah looked impossibly small against the massive alien, her training weapon seeming like a toy in comparison to his array of simulated blades. "This will be over quickly," HFY whispered to another Zephyrian. "The human cannot possibly match a Gorvak in single combat." The signal came and Thoraxvin charged forward with overwhelming force. His 4 arms moved in perfect coordination, creating a wall of attacks that should have been impossible to defend against. Sarah did something unexpected. She didn't try to block or parry. Instead, she moved. Human beings, despite their apparent weaknesses, possessed something most galactic species had lost through evolution: perfect balance and spatial awareness. Where other species had developed specialized combat abilities, humans had retained the adaptability of persistence hunters. Sarah flowed around Thoraxvin's attacks like water around stone. She used his own momentum against him, redirecting his charges and turning his strength into liability. When she finally struck, it was with precision rather than power, targeting nerve clusters that would disable rather than damage. The Gorvak warrior collapsed, his nervous system temporarily disrupted by Sarah's precise strikes. The arena erupted in shocked whispers. "Impossible," Velthorn muttered. "No one has defeated a Gorvak in single combat without superior firepower." Sarah's next opponent was Krixtal, a Zephyrian aerial fighter who could attack from any angle. Again, the betting heavily favored the alien. Zephyrians were known for their incredible speed and three-dimensional combat abilities, but Sarah had studied their weaknesses. When Krixtal took to the air, Sarah did something that surprised everyone. She threw her weapon, not at her opponent, but at the arena's environmental controls. The impact activated the facility's weather simulation system, filling the air with thick fog and artificial rain. Suddenly, the Zephyrian's aerial advantage became a weakness as her crystalline wings grew heavy with moisture. The fight ended when Sarah used the fog as cover to approach undetected, striking pressure points that sent Krixtal crashing to the ground. Round after round, Sarah faced opponents who should have easily defeated her: a Throrian whose natural armor should have made him invulnerable, an Altarian whose forearms and enhanced reflexes gave him overwhelming advantages. Each time, Sarah found a way to win through strategy, preparation, and an understanding of her opponents that went far deeper than simple combat training. But her victories came at a cost. Each fight left her more exhausted than the last. Her human endurance, impressive by galactic standards, was being pushed to its limits. By the time she faced her final opponent, she could barely stand. Her last challenger was Zeknos, a veteran recruit from the Nexari species. The Nexari were known for their psychic abilities and energy manipulation. Unlike the others, Zeknos didn't rely on physical strength. He could attack Sarah's mind directly, causing pain and disorientation without ever touching her. As the psychic assault began, Sarah felt her consciousness being invaded. Waves of artificial fear and confusion washed over her, designed to paralyze her with terror. Most beings would have collapsed immediately under such an attack. But humans, Sarah realized, had something unique: imagination. While other species experienced psychic attacks as overwhelming reality, humans could recognize them as artificial constructs. Her mind, trained by years of human literature, gaming, and storytelling, could distinguish between real and simulated experiences. Instead of fighting the psychic intrusion, Sarah embraced it. She used her imagination to reshape the attack, turning Zeknos' mental assault into a weapon against himself. The psychic feedback was so intense that the Nexari collapsed. His own abilities turned against him. The arena fell completely silent. In the space of 2 hours, Sarah had defeated representatives from 6 different warrior species, using methods that defied conventional military doctrine. Instructor Velthorn approached slowly, his expression unreadable. "Human," he said finally, "you fight like no warrior I have ever encountered." "I don't fight like a warrior, sir," Sarah replied, swaying slightly from exhaustion. "I fight like a human." That night, the beacon in Sarah's gear pulsed again, stronger this time. Deep in space, something ancient stirred with greater interest. The small human was proving to be exactly what it had been waiting for: a being who could think beyond conventional limitations, who could turn disadvantages into advantages, who could win through intelligence rather than strength. Commander Vextal received a priority message from Galactic Command that evening. Fleet Admiral Korathal of the Altarian High Council wanted a full report on the human recruit who had been making waves at training camp Zerion. "Sir," the message read, "we are receiving reports of impossible combat victories achieved by a human female. Given the strategic implications of such capabilities, we require immediate evaluation. If these reports are accurate, we may need to reassess our understanding of human potential." As Sarah fell into exhausted sleep, she had no idea that her actions were already changing how the galaxy viewed her species. The joke recruit was becoming something far more significant: proof that humans might be the most dangerous warriors the universe had ever seen. Fleet Admiral Korathal arrived at Training Camp Xerion unannounced, his massive command ship casting shadows across the facility's landing pads. The Altarian High Council's most decorated military leader rarely visited training installations, and his presence sent ripples of nervous energy throughout the base. Commander Vextal met the Admiral at the airlock, his four eyes reflecting barely contained anxiety. "Admiral, your arrival honors our facility," he said, performing the traditional Altarian greeting gesture. "Skip the formalities." "Commander?" Korathal replied, his ancient voice carrying the weight of 3 centuries of military command. "I am here about the human. Show me everything." In the base's main briefing room, holographic displays showed Sarah's complete training record. Combat simulations, tactical exercises, psychological evaluations, and detailed analysis of her unconventional fighting methods filled the air with blue light. "Remarkable," the Admiral murmured, studying footage of Sarah's victory against the Nixari psychic warrior. Her neural patterns during the mental assault show no signs of traditional resistance training. "How did she counter a psychic attack?" "Our specialists believe she used what humans call imagination to reshape the psychic intrusion," Commander Vextal explained. "It is a cognitive ability we do not fully understand." Admiral Korathal's antennae twitched with interest. His species had studied warfare for millennia, cataloging the strengths and weaknesses of every known combat form. But humans appeared to operate outside established parameters. "Where is she now?" he asked. "Advanced reconnaissance training, sir. We assigned her to specialized stealth operations after her combat demonstrations." In the training facility's most challenging environment, Sarah moved through a simulated enemy installation with 3 other recruits. The exercise was designed to test infiltration skills under extreme pressure. Motion sensors, thermal detectors, and automated defense systems created a nearly impossible gauntlet. Her teammates were among the camp's best: Kexpol the engineer, Velnara the peaceful Throrian who had discovered a talent for electronic warfare, and Krixtal the Zephyrian who had become Sarah's unexpected ally after their combat match. "Human scout reports are consistently impossible," Krixtal transmitted through their team's communication system. "No being should be able to move so silently." Sarah had indeed mastered stealth in ways that confounded her instructors. While other species relied on technological camouflage or natural abilities, Sarah used something simpler: patience and observation. She moved when enemies were distracted, hid in shadows that sensors couldn't penetrate, and anticipated patrol patterns with uncanny accuracy. But as they progressed deeper into the simulation, Sarah noticed something wrong. The exercise parameters were changing in real time, becoming more difficult than any training scenario should be. Additional guards appeared, sensor networks expanded, and defensive systems activated beyond safe training levels. "This isn't a training exercise anymore," she whispered into her communicator. "Someone's testing us for real." Admiral Korathal watched from the control room as Sarah led her team through increasingly dangerous obstacles. "Increase difficulty by another 20%, he ordered. "Sir, that exceeds safe training parameters," the facility's AI warned. "Risk of serious injury approaches unacceptable levels." "The human female has exceeded all parameters we thought possible," the Admiral replied. "I must know her true capabilities." Sarah sensed the change immediately. The simulation had become lethal. Automated defense systems were now firing with enough power to cause permanent damage. The exercise had transformed into a genuine survival situation. "Team, we need to abort," Kexpol transmitted frantically. "Systems are operating at combat levels." "No," Sarah replied, studying the facility's defensive grid through her scanner. "They want to see what we can do under real pressure. Let's show them." What happened next would be talked about in military academies for decades. Sarah didn't just complete the impossible exercise, she turned it into a teaching demonstration. Using her team's unique abilities in combination, she created a cascade failure in the facility's security systems. Velnara's electronic warfare skills disrupted communication networks, while Kexpol's engineering knowledge identified structural weaknesses. Krixtal provided aerial reconnaissance while Sarah coordinated their actions with tactical precision that impressed even seasoned military observers. But the true revelation came when Sarah accessed the facility's central computer. Instead of simply completing the exercise objectives, she reprogrammed the entire simulation. turning the defensive systems against themselves and creating safe passages for future training groups. Impossible, Admiral Korathal breathed, watching the displays. She has not only completed the exercise, she has improved it. In the debriefing room afterward, Sarah stood before the Admiral with her 3 teammates. Her uniform was torn and dirty, but her eyes held steady confidence. "Human Sarah Chen," the Admiral said formally, "your performance has been noted by the High Council. We have never seen such tactical innovation from a recruit." "Thank you, sir," Sarah replied simply. "Tell me, what drives your species to such extraordinary measures? What makes humans fight so differently from established warriors?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "Sir, humans don't fight to prove we're strong. We fight to survive. Every victory teaches us something new. Every defeat shows us what we need to improve. We adapt because we have to." "And what do you believe your species brings to galactic defense?" "Hope, sir," Sarah said without hesitation. "When conventional methods fail, when established tactics prove insufficient, humans find another way. We turn impossible situations into opportunities." That evening, Admiral Korathal sent an encrypted message to the Altarian High Council that would change humanity's place in galactic society. "Recommend immediate acceleration of human military integration," his report began. "This species possesses capabilities that could revolutionize our understanding of warfare. Request permission to establish formal alliance protocols with Earth's government." But far from Earth, in the darkness between stars, something else took notice of the Admiral's report. The ancient entity that had been watching Sarah's progress stirred with growing anticipation. The time was approaching when it would need to reveal itself, when the small human's growing reputation would attract the kind of attention that required more than conventional protection. The beacon in Sarah's gear pulsed one more time, stronger than ever before. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn that humans were not alone in the universe, and those who had dismissed them as weak jokes would discover just how wrong they had been. 3 months after Admiral Korathal's visit, Sarah received orders that shocked everyone at Training Camp Zerion. She was being transferred directly to active duty, bypassing the remaining 6 months of standard military training. No recruit in galactic history had ever been fast-tracked so dramatically. Her new assignment was even more surprising. The GDF Vengeance, flagship of the Third Fleet, currently engaged in patrol operations along the dangerous frontier known as the Void Edge. This region of space bordered the mysterious dark sector, where ships regularly disappeared and no exploration missions ever returned. "This is unprecedented," Commander Vextal told Sarah as he processed her transfer orders. "The Vengeance is Admiral Korathal's personal command ship. You will be serving directly under the most respected military leader in the galaxy." Sarah's teammates gathered to see her off. Kexpol chittered nervously, his antennae drooping with emotion. "I calculate only a 23.7% chance that we will serve together again," he said sadly. "Statistics don't account for human stubbornness," Sarah replied with a smile. "I'll find a way to bring my team back together." Velnara, the peaceful Throrian, had been transformed by their training together. "You taught me that strength comes in many forms," she said. "I will remember that lesson." Even Crixtal, the proud Zephyrian, showed respect. "Fly straight, human. The galaxy is watching your species now." The journey to reach the Third Fleet took Sarah through the heart of galactic civilization. The transport ship passed massive space stations where dozens of species traded and mingled, ancient worlds where the earliest spacefaring races had built their empires, and the gleaming capital systems where the Galactic Defense Force maintained its primary bases. But as they traveled further from the galactic core, Sarah noticed the change in atmosphere. Crew members spoke in hushed tones about the Void Edge, sharing stories of ships that had vanished without trace, of strange signals detected from the dark sector, of ancient warnings left by long-dead civilizations. The GDF Vengeance was a marvel of Altarian engineering, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern. Its hull gleamed with adaptive armor that could reconfigure itself in combat, while weapon arrays powerful enough to crack planets dotted its surface. 10,000 crew members from 50 different species worked aboard the massive vessel. Admiral Korathal met Sarah personally when she came aboard. His command bridge was a testament to organized efficiency, with holographic displays showing the positions of every ship in the Third Fleet, sensor readings from across the frontier, and tactical assessments of potential threats. "Welcome aboard the Vengeance, human Sarah Chen," he said formally. "Your reputation has preceded you." "Thank you for the opportunity, sir," Sarah replied, looking around the impressive bridge. "You will be assigned to the Strategic Analysis Division," the Admiral continued. "We have encountered situations here that conventional military doctrine cannot address. Your unique perspective may prove valuable." Sarah's new department was led by Colonel Thexara, a brilliant Nexari strategist whose psychic abilities allowed her to process vast amounts of tactical data simultaneously. The team included representatives from 12 different species, each bringing their own specialized knowledge to complex problems. "Human," Colonel Thexara said during Sarah's first briefing, "we face mysteries that challenge our understanding of warfare itself. Ships disappear along the dark sector border with no distress signals, no debris, no trace of what happened to them. Conventional analysis has yielded no results." The holographic display showed the frontier region, with red markers indicating the locations of vanished vessels. 47 ships over the past year, ranging from small scouts to massive cruisers. The pattern seemed random, with no obvious strategic value to the losses. "What do the crews report before disappearing?" Sarah asked. "Nothing unusual. Normal patrol reports, routine communication, standard sensor readings." Then silence. Sarah studied the data for hours, looking for patterns that others had missed. The missing ships represented 6 different species, various ship classes, and seemingly random patrol routes. But as she examined the information more carefully, she began to notice something. "Colonel, may I see the personal logs from the crews?" she requested. "Personal logs are not considered relevant to tactical analysis," Thexara replied. "Human perspective often focuses on individual behavior rather than fleet movements," Sarah explained. "Sometimes personal details reveal larger truths." With permission granted, Sarah spent days reviewing the personal communications, duty logs, and informal reports from the vanished crews. What she found sent chills through her human nervous system. In the final weeks before each disappearance, crew members had reported strange dreams. Visions of vast entities moving in the darkness of space, whispers in languages no one recognized, and an overwhelming sense of being watched by something ancient and alien. "They were being studied," Sarah told Colonel Thexara during her next briefing. "Something in the dark sector was learning about our ships, our crews, our capabilities." "Preposterous," the colonel replied. "Psychic phenomena cannot affect ship operations." "What if it's not psychic? What if it's something else entirely?" Before the colonel could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Emergency signals flooded the bridge as Admiral Corathal's voice echoed through the corridors. "All hands to battle stations. Unknown contact approaching from the dark sector." "This is not a drill." On the main display, a massive shape emerged from the darkness between stars. It was unlike any ship design in galactic records, organic-looking, covered in what appeared to be living tissue, and radiating energy signatures that their sensors couldn't classify. "Admiral," the sensor operator reported, "the entity is scanning our ship. Its technology is beyond our ability to analyze." As the alien presence focused its attention on the Vengeance, crew members throughout the ship began experiencing the same phenomena that had plagued the missing vessels. Strange dreams, whispered voices, and the terrible sensation of being examined by an intelligence vast beyond comprehension. But in her quarters, Sarah felt something different. The beacon she had carried since recruitment was no longer silent. It pulsed with increasing intensity, responding to the alien presence with what could only be described as recognition. Something was coming to answer her call, something that had been waiting in the darkness for the right moment to reveal itself. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity had allies older and more powerful than anyone had imagined. The alien vessel held position just beyond weapons range, its organic hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to hypnotize anyone who stared too long. Across the Vengeance, crew members struggled against the psychic intrusion that accompanied the entity's presence. Admiral Corathal gripped his command chair as waves of alien thoughts washed over his mind. Around him, bridge officers from a dozen different species fought to maintain their posts while battling mental intrusions that threatened to overwhelm their consciousness and shields. "Our holding," reported the tactical officer, though his voice shook with effort. "But the entity is not attacking with conventional weapons. It's studying us, learning our weaknesses." In the Strategic Analysis Division, Colonel Thexara collapsed as her psychic abilities backfired against the alien presence. Her mental defenses, trained to resist enemy telepaths, proved useless against something so fundamentally different from known galactic life. Sarah found herself oddly unaffected by the mental assault. While others writhed in confusion and terror, she felt only a strange sense of anticipation. The beacon in her gear was now pulsing so rapidly it seemed to vibrate with its own heartbeat. She made her way to the bridge, moving through corridors filled with crew members who had fallen unconscious under the psychic pressure. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as the ship's systems struggled to compensate for the alien interference. "Admiral?" Sarah called out as she reached the command center. Korathal turned toward her, his ancient eyes wide with strain. "Human, you should be in protective custody. This entity is beyond our ability to comprehend." "Sir, I think I understand what's happening," Sarah said, pulling out her beacon device. "This isn't an attack. It's a test." Before the Admiral could respond, Sarah activated the beacon. The small device erupted with brilliant light that somehow didn't hurt to look at directly. The energy pattern it emitted was complex beyond description, a signal that carried information encoded in ways that galactic science had never encountered. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Space itself seemed to tear open as something fast emerged from dimensions that existed parallel to normal reality. The new arrival dwarfed both the Vengeance and the alien vessel, its form shifting between geometric impossibilities that hurt to perceive directly. But as it stabilized into something approaching comprehensible shape, the crew of the Vengeance gasped in recognition. The entity was ancient beyond measure, composed of energy patterns that had existed since the birth of galaxies, yet somehow it felt familiar, protective, almost parental. Communication came not through radio waves or psychic contact, but through direct knowledge transfer that bypassed language entirely. Every being on the ship suddenly understood what they were witnessing. The entity that had been stalking ships along the frontier was a guardian, one of many that watched the galactic borders for threats from the spaces between stars. The disappearing vessels had not been destroyed. They had been removed to protect them from something far worse that lurked in the cosmic deep, and the vast presence that had answered Sarah's beacon was their protector, an ancient being that had watched over humanity since their species first looked up at the stars with wondering eyes. "We are the shepherds." The knowledge flowed through every mind on the ship. "We guide young species toward wisdom and strength. Humanity has reached the threshold where guidance must become alliance." Admiral Korathal stared at Sarah with new understanding. "You knew," he said. "Somehow you knew this would happen." "Not new, sir," Sarah replied, her eyes reflecting the impossible light of the shepherd entity. "Hoped. Humans have always felt like we weren't alone in the universe. We just never knew how to make contact." The guardian vessel that had been terrorizing the frontier suddenly seemed much smaller and less threatening. Through the knowledge transfer, the crew learned that it was actually a warning system, alerting the shepherds when younger species encountered dangers they weren't ready to face. "The dark sector contains threats that would consume entire galaxies if released," the shepherd communicated. "Your kind shows promise, but the galaxy is not yet ready for what lies beyond the barriers we maintain." Colonel Thexara struggled to her feet, her psychic abilities slowly recovering. "Are you saying that humanity has some special relationship with these shepherds?" "Every species that survives to reach the stars is given guardians," came the reply. "But humans are unique. Where others develop strength or intellect or special abilities, humans develop something rarer, the wisdom to know when they need help, and the courage to ask for it." The revelation sent shockwaves through galactic society when Admiral Korathal's report reached the High Council. Humanity, the species that had been dismissed as weak jokes, were protégés of entities older than recorded history. The small beacon that Sarah carried was revealed to be technology beyond galactic understanding, a gift from guardians who had been waiting for humans to mature enough to use it responsibly. But the true implications went far deeper. The shepherds revealed that the galaxy faced threats from the spaces between dimensions, cosmic horrors that had destroyed countless civilizations. The current galactic powers, despite their military might, were children playing with toys compared to what lurked in the cosmic deep. "Your weapons are impressive against other children," the shepherd communicated to the assembled fleet that had gathered to witness this historic contact. But they are useless against the entities that devour reality itself. Defense requires different skills. As the massive entity prepared to return to its watch in the cosmic deep, it left behind knowledge that would revolutionize galactic civilization. Humans were not just another member species. They were the key to survival against threats that conventional military power could never address. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching as space folded around the departing shepherd. The beacon in her hands had gone silent, its purpose fulfilled. Around her, crew members from dozens of species looked at her with new respect and understanding. The human recruit who had been a joke to them was revealed as something far more significant. The herald of humanity's true role in galactic destiny. The galaxy would never again underestimate the species that had guardians older than stars watching over them. 6 months after first contact with the shepherds, the galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The revelation that humanity possessed ancient guardians had shifted every political alliance, military strategy, and scientific priority across civilized space. Sarah found herself at the center of changes that rippled through countless star systems. No longer a simple recruit, she had been promoted to the newly created position of Human Shepherd Liaison, working directly with the Galactic High Council to prepare for threats that conventional forces could never handle. The training camp Xerion, where she had once been mocked, now served as the primary research facility for Shepherd technology. Scientists from every major species worked alongside human researchers, trying to understand devices that operated on principles beyond their current knowledge. Kexpol had been reassigned to Sarah's team, his engineering expertise proving crucial in analyzing Shepherd communications equipment. The mathematical principles behind their technology suggest the existence of at least 11 dimensions, he reported during one of their daily briefings. Human intuitive understanding of these concepts exceeds our most advanced theoretical models. Velnara, the peaceful Throrian, had become the galaxy's leading expert on Shepherd linguistics. Her natural empathy allowed her to interpret the emotional context behind their knowledge transfers. They are not distant gods, she explained to amazed scholars. They are teachers who genuinely care about our development as thinking beings. Even Krixtal, the proud Zephyrian, had embraced the new reality. Her aerial combat skills had evolved to incorporate Shepherd insights about multidimensional movement. Humans see space differently than we do, she admitted to her former instructors. They understand that physical limitations are often mental constructs. But the most dramatic changes occurred at the highest levels of galactic government. The Altarian High Council, which had ruled military affairs for centuries, found themselves restructuring their entire approach to defense. Admiral Korathal had been appointed to lead the new Interdimensional Defense Initiative, working directly with human advisors to prepare for threats that existed beyond normal space. We have been fighting wars like children with wooden swords, he admitted during a closed session of the High Council. The Shepherds have shown us that true warfare occurs on levels we never imagined possible. The frontier regions where ships had mysteriously disappeared were now understood to be defensive perimeters. The Guardian vessels that had once terrorized patrol fleets were revealed as early warning systems, monitoring cosmic barriers that held back entities capable of consuming entire star clusters. Sarah stood in the observation deck of the new research station built where the dark sector began, watching as human and alien scientists worked together to understand technologies that defied conventional physics. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the faint shimmer of interdimensional barriers that kept unimaginable horrors at bay. Remarkable, said Dr. Zethmore, the Nexari physicist who led the research team. Human mathematical intuition allows them to work with equations that our most powerful computers cannot solve. They perceive patterns in chaos that our logical minds cannot grasp. The beacon that had started everything now sat in a place of honor in the station's central laboratory. Its technology had been partially decoded, revealing communication methods that could reach across not just space but time itself. The Shepherds had been watching humanity's development since before their ancestors had discovered fire. They knew, Sarah told the assembled researchers during one of their weekly briefings. They knew we would eventually reach this point, where we would need their help to survive what's coming. The threats from beyond the cosmic barriers were not theoretical. Deep space monitoring stations had detected reality distortions that suggested something vast and malevolent was testing the Shepherd's defenses. Entire regions of space in distant galaxies had gone dark, consumed by entities that existed outside normal physics. "The barriers are weakening," reported Commander Velthorn, the Krolix veteran who now led long-range reconnaissance missions. "Our sensors detect increasing dimensional instability along the frontier. Something is coming." But humanity had not been idle. Working with Shepherd guidance, human engineers had developed new types of weapons and defenses that operated on principles their former military doctrine had never contemplated. Instead of destroying enemies with conventional force, these systems altered reality itself, creating spaces where hostile entities simply could not exist. The irony was not lost on galactic observers. The species that had been dismissed as physically weak had proven capable of wielding powers that made conventional strength irrelevant. Human weapons didn't need to overpower their enemies. They simply changed the rules of reality to make those enemies impossible. Sarah's own abilities had evolved far beyond what anyone had expected. Regular contact with Shepherd entities had awakened capabilities that existed within human consciousness, but had never been properly developed. She could now perceive interdimensional spaces directly, communicate across cosmic distances without technology, and understand mathematical concepts that existed beyond normal logic. "You are becoming something new," Colonel Thexara observed during one of their strategy sessions. "Not just human anymore, but not fully Shepherd either. Something in between." "Maybe that's what the galaxy needs," Sarah replied, studying readouts that showed increasing instability along the cosmic barriers. "Beings who can bridge the gap between what we are and what we need to become." The final test came when long-range sensors detected the first breach in the interdimensional barriers. Something vast and hungry had broken through the Shepherd's defenses, and it was heading directly toward inhabited space. Conventional forces would be useless against an entity that existed partially outside reality itself. But as alarms sounded across the galaxy and military fleets scrambled to respond to an unprecedented threat, Sarah felt only calm determination. The human recruit who had once been laughed at by superior alien warriors was about to demonstrate why her species had been chosen as partners by the oldest intelligences in the universe. The joke was over. Humanity's true role in galactic history was about to begin, and the universe would never be the same again.